So in today's episode, we're going to be turning this charity shop find into a D&D creature. So what do I mean by a grove guardian or forest elemental? Well, I guess what I'm looking at is a lot of the imagery that comes with fantasy artwork or role-playing games, things from D&D. There's lots of different creatures that are like awakened trees, and all of that imagery goes back to other things. I mean, whether it's Swamp Thing, whether it's the fairy stories with Arthur Rackham's illustrations that I remember from my childhood, but tree ants and the huorns and obviously the ents as well from Tolkien. But also Guillermo del Toro's Great Green Elemental from Hellboy 2. That's the sort of thing I was hoping to build. As with a lot of things like this, it starts with trolling around some charity shops to find some toys to cut up. This one in particular was very vocal, singing the song of its people. But Tree Rex there was kind of like a video game toy. I basically broke apart and started to sculpt over the top of that using green stuff. I wanted to try and give it a kind of gorilla-like stance. Used a lot of pins and other things just to sort of like try and get the feel of it before filling in all the gaps that were left over. I was always using a 28mm figure for scale, you can see that there. So you can see I'm working on the legs there, there's infills with bolts there, a lot of it's fixed together with wire. And I cut a lot of the things off the Tree Rex figure, particularly those kind of like very tree wall details. Here's some lino cutting tools, they're pretty sharp. If you're going to use something like this to kind of scrape away some of this hard plastic, which they're very good at, just keep your fingers behind the blade, that's what I'm going to tell you. They're very, very sharp. So yeah, here I'm just trying to create more bark-like details in the dragon's hand that you saw earlier. It was really the only part of the dragon that I used on this. But this worked out pretty well. You'll see later in the video I end up extending those claws a little as well. But yeah, that worked out pretty good. The pin vise, it comes in handy on all the projects I'm working. If you haven't got one, get one. It's really good for this kind of like job, especially when you're slotting wire and things like that. This was the other limb there. You can see I've started to reattach that to the main body. These corkboards were really useful. The sort of thing that I would probably have used back in the day, trying to get animation armatures to walk across, but holding it all down with pins. And again, you can see that 28mm fig that I've got just for scale. Yeah, and I've added on those extra bits there so you can see now the difference between the original Tree Rex and where I'm at. I also wanted to add in a load of axes and other things. You can see them going in there as if over the years humans had attacked it, thinking possibly it was just a tree to start with, but also it got into some scraps. So now I wanted to try and create some antlers or branches that kind of maybe look like antlers, give it that kind of horned god, Herne the Hunter sort of like look. This was it's supposed to be like a 3D pen. I struggled to kind of get that element of it to work, but I thought for this, with it being a slightly more textured finish that I'm looking for in these branches, that maybe this would work, and it didn't do bad, to be fair. Especially when I started to turn them on the side here. The plastic comes out and it dries pretty quickly, so you've just got to keep the newer parts that you're doing, the hotter parts parts of the plastic sort of like hanging downwards. But you keep rotating the branches around and you get a little bit of 3D going on there. Then I tidied that up, clipped a few bits off here and there. You can see my rig there that I'm filming on. A lot of this part of the model was actually done quite a long time ago, and this has been sitting around waiting for me to get around to finishing it. So there you go, that's me dry fitting those, and they look pretty good. You can see I've added the claws there, just toothpicks, the plastic sort of toothpicks that you can get, a little bit of green stuff over the top. I wanted a great like slashing hand as one of the weapons for this creature, and here I'm using a little bit more green stuff just to kind of infill around some of those branches. Just where they're a little bit too open or too obviously 3D pen like the textures there, and so there it's kind of really starting to come together now. Again, you can see that with my notion was to have my creatures that I want to build looking at the 28mm figures that would be on the table with them. I made some tiny mushrooms, which I put on that red right hand. Feet from another dragon toy that I cut apart there, and then with a little bit of primer it all kind of comes together. You can see that there's some extra arms on the back there. They came from a dinosaur toy. So this is me thinking about what I really wanted to do with this, and I was also thinking about doing some illustrations based on it to try and create a stat block for this creature when I use it in my games. And this was going to be the early version of it, where it's an angry forest elemental. So it's more bestial, and you're less able to reason with it. I was playing with the notion of flowers that were going to grow out of it, and maybe some sort of flower could be an asset for the players if they could get hold of it somehow, or if it was freely given. So yeah, you can see the stat block that I started to build up. And there's the illustration of the friendlier version of it, I suppose, but or the more anthropomorphized version of the tree creature. Here you can see it again with some figures for scale. And the whole notion is that, you know, a bunch of adventurers might go into a sacred forest and start chopping away with axes, and then suddenly find themselves confronted by this creature. These skeletons, I had one that was kind of like fastened to its arm, a bit sort of like Ahab, Moby Dick style there. And there's another one that's hanging from a branch, almost as if they've been sacrifices to it at some point, perhaps in the past. And I thought maybe there could be a spell that could be used by the players where these skeletons might talk and either help them with future references or tell them the way, have secrets that they could perhaps tell. So yeah. And again, all of these weapons that are stuck in the body of the creature to show its past battles. I found I wasn't happy with the face, and so this is more recently I went back in and decided I wanted to try and make the face a little more, I suppose, like the illustration. It was fairly crude, was the face, so I worked a little harder this time on trying to get something that where the proportions were a little better and a little less Yosemite Sam, I suppose. That's a tube of green stuff that I just basically was using almost like a pen and drawing extra 3D details onto it. Here's the more bestial face, shall we say, the kind of angry creature version of it, which has one of those, it starts to look like one of those very primitive sort of like predatory fish, prehistoric fish, which is great. And again, I wanted to play with the asymmetry of that version of the creature as well. So the more human-like face is definitely the more friendly of the two, and then the other one is going to have a different set of eyes on each side of its head, so maybe 2 eyes on one side, 3 eyes on the other. That's the removal of the face of the original, so I'm kind of committed to the change now. And you can see me just checking what that might look like there. Because I've got the 2 different versions of it, I'm going to have to use magnets here. So basically, I've thought of other ways that I could maybe, a kind of a slot system for dropping those on, but I thought magnets are going to be really quick at the table to swap things in and out. So that's the beginnings of the fully anthropomorphized face, and here you can see I'm using some bits from some Warhammer pieces that I picked up at a bring and buy sale, a Warhammer bring and buy sale here in Hull. And again with the bestial version, which I was really pleased with, this kind of worked out really nicely. On that side, 2 eyes on the other. I was looking for a base. I wanted the right size base for this kind of creature, so cutting out the middle of I think it's an old curry pot, so doing that, and then just getting a rough cut piece of card to slot underneath that to kind of give it a little bit more stability, and then just gluing that on. So that's just glued on with a bit of super glue, and there's my base for this creature. So that's a 100mm base now that I've got there. 4 inches, 4x4. That's fixing it to that base. Just adding a little bit of pressure. And then taking some glue and using some basic materials. I think this is mostly just kitchen spices, really, so oregano, that sort of thing. I've done the same on some of the other basing elements of the videos and stuff in the past. So yeah, it's just PVA glue and oregano and some more grape stalks there, which have been really useful in the building up of some of the other creatures in there, with a little bit of primer on it, and you can see the whole kind of family that I started showing in the last video is starting to come together. I wasn't happy with the number of arms, so I wanted to go in there and add another extra one there. So rather than just having pairs of arms, I think there's 5 arms on this creature now. This one here has a magnet on the wrist, and so I can swap out the hands. So in one version it's got a sword, in another version it's got a staff, and I've even decided to add in another hand that's free from any of that. This is for another piece for part of the game, so like a ranged weapon where maybe roots go through the ground and then attack a player where he stood at a distance, and that's with just a little bit of paint on it there. So yeah, that's the creature. It's not fully painted yet, it's just kind of like got some base painting on it. And you can see there's the skeleton hanging from one of the boughs. And again, those eyes are looking at the 28mm character. So there's taking the staff away and then adding in the sword version, and it's just literally that quick. You can just swap things out that quick with the magnet version of it. Take that one out and add that small red claw version. Still needs painting up, obviously. Yeah, there. So maybe that's how it starts, and then it can manifest the staff if it needs it, and manifest the sword. Both of them with those kind of Warhammer bits look like they could just be grown out of the tree. So here's just removing the anthropomorphic head and adding in the more bestial head. It's pretty quick. And again, just swapping back, just to show that that's a pretty easy task. There's some of those grape stalks. I just thought I'd show those again. They're going to be seen in a lot of the other creatures that are there with it. This is the notion of this attack at a distance that I was talking about. I had thought about some like rock grub type creatures that I was going to add into a little pile on there. That maybe it could manifest and drop out of the palms of its hands. This is this root that would travel through the earth and then suddenly appear close to a player. Striking at the player, and players would have to dodge or leap out of the way or be knocked prone perhaps by the tunnelling through the earth. So again, a lot of gameplay could be added into this. And these are just the whole family of them with their large inert tree versions of themselves. You can see there's an owl there in that one and an owl there in this one, just sort of show how one possibly becomes the other. Or you could just use them as, you know, terrain. Still needs a fair amount of paint on this to bring it up to scratch. There's the two heads side by side. And the replacement hands. And here's, again, some of those trees when it's just terrain and then when it becomes a creature. This is the next size down. So this is the largest of the awakened trees that you might have the main Grove God tree call upon. This one has got some sort of cart that it's grown up through over the years, and then when this one turns into an awakened tree, it kind of adapts that as well into its body, so that that one can become something that the players can actually use as almost like a vehicle, I guess. This is the one with the sword. That's the druid, the body of the druid that the tree has grown up through, like growing through its armour, so that when it becomes awakened, it has spells that it can use, including this flaming sword. This one's again like a sacrifice on a tree, and then how it might look if it was to split that trunk into two legs and start walking about. And then a much more regular kind of tree shape that then becomes a very much more regular, if smaller, style ent. There's the 2 other additions that I put into it, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I mean, if you liked this video, tell other people, like, subscribe, maybe share it, leave a comment, that would be great. And yeah, I've now got this family of terrain and awakened trees that I can use in a game. I'm going to have to do some proper like turntable glamour shots, maybe in another video for these at a later date, and maybe with those I can put all of the stat blocks next to each of the creatures as well. So that might be just a separate video further down the line. See you in the next one.